afternoon, good morning, good evening. Zimbabwe's political turmoil continues. I think there's no denying that China is the one country that has played a pivotal role in Zimbabwe politics ever since the country's independence in 1980. And according to some media, the Chinese are advising Mnangagwa against his push to postpone the 2028 elections. As much as one cannot verify that report, I think it is important that Zimbabweans should consider what China thinks. There's always been a pivotal player. Indeed, looking at what has happened in the country, Zimbabwe is a Chinese colony in all but name. So, what is the colonial power's position in regard to this ongoing fight in Zanu PF? Ben, welcome to the program.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, my position on this still remains, it's quite unfortunate that, a mouse doesn't have much of an option when it's given to choose, to choose between, a black mamba and a cobra. Either way, it's going to die. And unfortunately, we ordinary Zimbabweans are the mouse here. We really don't have an option. Whether the fight is between Mnangagwa, Chiwenga, and whoever, we are bound to suffer because none of them have got the will of the people. None of them are out to look out for us. They're looking for themselves and their next of kin. So either way, going into an election with Zanu PF, going into an election as things remain, the mouse will suffer.
Well, the question here is what will be China's position vis-a-vis Mnangagwa's push to postpone the 2028 elections so that he could remain in office? I think, according to this program, to this video, the Chinese have phoned Mnangagwa and advised him that he should not go down that route. To me, that will make a lot of sense. The Chinese will know that it is bad enough to keep Zanu PF in power. It is hard enough to keep Zanu PF in power, given the overwhelming pressure for meaningful political change in the country. But if Mnangagwa was to steamroll the nation and go ahead with his plan to postpone the 2028 elections, that will make it even harder for Zanu PF to retain power. And China cannot afford to have Zanu PF booted out of office. And my view would be that Mnangagwa will be warned by China, if they have not done so already, that what he's trying to do is unacceptable.
Well, from a business point of view and looking at China's investment in Zimbabwe, political instability would not be good for business. We know China has invested a lot of money in Zimbabwe. China has got a lot of loans that are pending payment from the Zimbabwe government. So, by Mnangagwa pushing for a third term and risking, political instability, which is good, which would be bad for China. So I understand why China would push and say, don't do it from a business perspective, protecting their own interests, not the interests of Zimbabwe.
Well, let's review China's role in the 2017 military coup. At the time, there are reports saying that Chiwenga visited China and was reassured of China's support. It is a historic fact that by the time of the military coup of 2017, Mugabe had completely fallen out with China. In 2016, Mugabe booted out the Chinese company that was looting the diamonds in Marange and Chiazwa, and had publicly denounced the Chinese for failing, or rather refusing, to bankroll Zimbabwe's or Mugabe's various demands. And as we know, the coup of 2017 happened, and a few months later, the Chinese company that had been booted out of Marange and Chiazwa was back in Zimbabwe. In other words, Zimbabwe and China had reconciled, which would give the impression that the Mnangagwa government had the blessing of China in conducting the military coup. So the role of the Chinese cannot be denied. But however, in this particular case, I think the Chinese will be looking at which is the lesser evil. They know that Mnangagwa's regime is highly unpopular now in Zimbabwe. Let's face it, the 2017 military coup, one of the justifications for it was that they were removing Mugabe and those around him to save the economy, because the country's economy was in total meltdown. But if the truth be said, Mnangagwa has failed to revive the economy. Indeed, corruption under Mugabe was bad, but under Mnangagwa, it has gone into overdrive. The people are restless for change. And Mnangagwa's attempt to stay on in power, and in this particular case, going to the extent, it's bad enough rigging the elections, but denying the people the meaningful right to a vote, even if that election process is flawed, is going too far. He's only compounding his political problems. I think the better alternative would be to let his VP Chiwenga be the candidate of the party and rally behind him, and the Chinese will rally behind him, so that they rig the 2028 elections and the Chinese can have a Zanu PF government. Those are the lesser of the evil, the two evils. This idea that Mnangagwa is going to push for the change of the constitution to deny people the vote or postpone the 2028 elections is becoming increasingly problematic. I believe that as much as Zanu PF would want to pretend that they can push it, they know they cannot do so. There are some reports saying that Chiwenga has started endorsing Mnangagwa's position, in fact, to stay in power until 2030. I think the two may have met and agreed that Mnangagwa will stand aside for 2028. They will not change the constitution. But it is in Zanu PF's interest to pretend that they will change it, and thus keep the rest of the populace on their toes, forever campaigning that they should not change the constitution, when in reality the party has no intention of doing so. And nearer the time, they'll publicly announce that they've listened to the people and Zanu PF has decided that Vice President Chiwenga is the Zanu PF candidate for the party. And the nation will be steamrolled into an election with not even one token reform implemented, and go on to rig and get away with it. I think that is the strategy, the way I see it.
From what I see, when I look at China's interests in Zimbabwe, now I would use Shona and say China yakabata Zimbabwe kuti G. Everything, every development, or almost every development that is standing in Zimbabwe, be it parliament building, airport, is alone facilitated by China. So technically, right through to Zesa Wange, right now Zimbabwe is failing to service that debt that they owe to China. So almost everything that is standing in Zimbabwe, infrastructure-wise, technically belongs to China. So China owns Zimbabwe as we speak. So whatever Zimbabwe decides, they have to run it by China. This is why you find before the coup, somebody had to go and tell China. And even when Chamisa was campaigning, he promised China that your interests are going to be protected. That is the first thing. This is where you end up, when you look at the big picture, you see that China is a major player in any decision that happens in Zimbabwe, because we are up to our necks in debt to China. So, from the political, perspective, China wouldn't want any unrest. And like you said, the Zimbabwe situation, it's uneasy right now. Anything can happen if they try and push this, third term, So China rightfully, because of their business interests, would want to, put caution in the mix to say, no, what are the, implications if you guys do this? You are risking our investment. So no to that. So I understand where China is coming from.
Well, in conclusion, I would say that as much as China would not want Mnangagwa to push this agenda of postponing the 2023 elections, China will also understand the strategic advantage of pretending that that is exactly what Zanu PF is planning to do, so that they can leave the majority of the ordinary Zimbabweans and the opposition, catch them off guard. Zanu PF is not going to drop this issue of postponing 2023 elections. It is in their interest to maintain that campaign, knowing fully well that at the end of the day, they will drop it. So as far as I'm concerned, and my advice to the people of Zimbabwe is Zanu PF will be pushing this idea that they want to postpone the 2028 elections hard, even harder than before, but only to fool people. We should be on our guard that we are not caught on the hop. Zimbabweans should focus on the need for meaningful democratic reforms to ensure 2028 elections are not a repeat of 2023. More so, and this is where our strength lies, to make sure that people are not conned into participating in those flawed elections in their millions. Because if you do, you will have given Zanu PF legitimacy. Zanu PF will exploit that weakness. They will push this agenda of postponing the elections just to frustrate people. And then the last minute turn around and say, no, we are a government that listens to the people. We are not going to postpone the elections. I'm going to step down. I'm a man of constitution. My assistant, VP Chwenga, will be the Zanu PF candidate. By then, it will be too late for people to restart the agenda of reforms or do not participate. And people will be conned into believing that, yes, this time we'll win. Or Chwenga is going to bring in a lot of significant changes. He is much better than Mnangagwa. And they participate in their millions, give the regime legitimacy, and we are back to square one. We need to be a lot smarter and not allow ourselves to be conned. Thank you very much for those of you who were able to join us tonight. I hope you'll be able to join us again tomorrow, 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. And thank you very much, Ben. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.